You know, the Ghetto Boys is one of the greatest hip hop groups of all time. Scarface is considered one of the greatest lyrical lyricists to ever touch a microphone. Willie D brought that gangster style when he used to rap. And Bushwick Bill was just off the chain. If you thought Old Dirty Bastard from the Wu-Tang Clan or Flavor Flav was wild and crazy, Bushwick was the first one. Bushwick was one of the first rappers making the news for his wild antics and controversy. And if you go on the internet and type in his name, everybody got a wild story about Bushwick Bill. He was the heart and soul of the Ghetto Boys. When you think of the Ghetto Boys, you think of Bushwick Bill. The song called My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me is one of the greatest hip hop songs of all time. I think his verse is one of the best of all time, to be honest. And you know what? That song, Mind Playing Tricks on Me, it's about mental health. You know, he was a dwarf, 3'8" in height, but when it came to music, he stood tall. And a lot of people don't know that he was a very religious and spiritual person and knew the Bible front and back. Believe it or not, the man was a Bible scholar. He was very intelligent. Jay Prince, the CEO of Rap-A-Lot Records, said Bushwick was one of the pillars when the city of Houston is concerned. He really was special in helping him lay down that foundation. He was the voice of the Ghetto Boys. He was the spokesperson for Ghetto Boys. But you know, Bushwick has been through a lot of tragedy and crazy stuff in his life, y'all. So let's get into his story. Now, Bushwick Bill's birth name is Richard William Stephen Shaw, and he was born on December 8th, 1966 in Kingston, Jamaica. Now, Bushwick said he was a breech baby, and the definition of a breech baby, the definition of a breech birth is when a baby is born bottom first instead of head first, as in normal. It's when the fetus's buttocks, feet, or both are in place to come out first during birth. Bushwick said him and his mother almost died when she was giving birth to him, and said the placenta actually came out first, which made him one of two people in the world that came out after the placenta. Wow. You know, he was the youngest of 9 kids from his parents, and his family actually grew up in Trenchtown, which was the home of most of all the top Jamaican musicians at the time, like Bob Marley. Bushwick's dad actually used to play backyard soccer with Bob Marley. Now, around 1973, he and his family moved to America from Jamaica because of all the violence and the political mess that was going on in Jamaica at that time. That's why Bob Marley left too. Remember, they was trying to kill him, trying to assassinate him. But anyway, so they left Jamaica, moved to the USA, and settled in the Bushwick area in Brooklyn, New York. And his father got a job as a janitor, and his mother worked as a housekeeper for hotels. But it was the early mid-70s when they arrived, and hip-hop was just starting due to DJ Kool Herc from the Bronx, who was also Jamaican. You know, there's a lot of debate, you know, that hip-hop really came from Jamaica and started with the battle of the sound systems and everything. But, you know, Bushwick was there. He saw it all from the beginning. He represented the 5 elements of hip-hop, and he loved doing the graffiti and was even down with his own crew called the Bushwick Posse. He was also down with the Guardian Angels, Zulu Nation, and used to hang with Fab Five Freddy doing the graffiti. But just like everybody else from that era, we all love hip hop. Now, Bushwick used to get bullied too, you know, for his size, and he will fight you quick if you mess with him. A lot of people don't know that he was very strong. He had them Popeye arms. But, you know, growing up in New York at that time, he seen a lot of crazy stuff from, you know, the crack era hit, dead bodies everywhere and everything. In the 6th grade, he had watched the 1970 movie called The Cross and the Switchblade, which follows teen gang members who convert to Christianity. And that was the movie that changed his life. and made him wanting to know more about the Bible. And he began to study and understand it more and more, to the point that he ended up leaving New York for Minnesota to attend Bible college out there called the Redemption Ministry Fellowship. And once he graduated from that Bible school at the top of his class, he was actually headed to India on a mission trip to help build houses, irrigation systems, schools, indoor plumbing to help people over there. But before he was scheduled to go to India, he had went to visit his sister and brother-in-law in Houston, Texas. And when he got there, he just loved it out there, especially how people in Houston used to have, the nice cars, loud bass music coming out of their speakers. So he ended up staying with his sister. And one day he just got bored just sitting in the house. And he just started walking, and he saw a club called the Rhinestone Wrangler, which later was changed to the Thunderdome, which was owned by Jay Prince, who also had the record label called Rap-A-Lot Records at the time. But it was a guy named DJ Lonnie Mack, who was the DJ for that club, who he ended up meeting. And, him and Bushwick became cool, and he got Bushwick a job there as a busboy. And, when DJ Lonnie Mack would play East Coast music like Public Enemy, Bushwick, being from New York, he got on the dance floor. Bushwick would get out there, start dancing, locking and popping and break dancing and stuff. And everybody just took a liking to him. Then he ended up meeting DJ Ready Red, who was from the East Coast. He was from New Jersey. And they became real good friends, to the point that DJ Ready Red moved in with Bushwick and his sister. And they were the ones who introduced him to Jay Prince, and was telling Jay Prince that he should put Bushwick in their Ghetto Boys group because he could dance. So, Bushwick and Jay Prince, they started hanging out all the time, and they used to talk about the Bible, hip hop history and stuff. And Jay Prince let him be a member of his group called the Ghetto Boys as a hype man and a dancer alongside Jukebox, Prince Johnny C, and DJ Ready Red. This was actually the second lineup of the Ghetto Boys, because the original lineup was Jay Prince's brother named Sir Rap-A-Lot, Raheem, and Jukebox. Now, another fact is Bushwick didn't rap at all on this album they was working on. He was just a hype man. And on February 17th, 1988, they released their debut album titled Making Trouble. But then right after that album, Jukebox and Prince Johnny C left the Ghetto Boys group. And that's when Jay Prince added Willie D and Scarface to the group. Now, Willie D was signed as a solo artist, and Jay Prince had asked him to join the group as a favor and help finish working on this album. Then he can go on and do his solo thing. That was the plan, but they had to finish this next Ghetto Boys album first. And on March 12th, 1989, they released the album titled Grip It on That Other Level, which ended up selling over 500,000 copies independently. What's crazy is, in 2002, the Source magazine went back and rated albums that were not rated upon their releases. And this album, Grip It on That Other Level, was one of them, and they gave it 5 mics. The Source gave it 5 mics. And now Bushwick did rap on this album. He had a song called Size Ain't Shh, which Willie D had wrote that song for him. Now, right after that, in 1990, Rick Rubin came in. Rick Rubin came in and signed the group to his label called Deaf American Records. And he remixed the whole Grip It on That Other Level album. They had to re-release it. Now, it was supposed to be re-released through Geffen Records, who was supposed to distribute it, that album. But the songs called Mind of a Lunatic, Gangsta of Love, Let a Hoe Be a Hoe, Assassins, and many other songs, it was just too controversial. So Geffen Records dropped out of the deal. The media was trying to say that the Ghetto Boys music was a mix of NWA's violent imagery and Two Live Crew's sexual nasties. So that's when Rick Rubin took it to Warner Brothers, and they released the album. Bushwick spoke about it. He spoke about it to the media, like Jay Prince said. Bushwick was the spokesman. He was a spokesperson for the Ghetto Boys. Bushwick said that their music is reality. It was reality seen, at least in part, from the viewpoint of contemporary horror movies. He said this is the reality he saw on the news and around him growing up. Movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Freddy Krueger, he said. When he turned on the TV, there's always somebody getting sexually assaulted, somebody getting killed. That's what they see on TV. It's entertainment. You know, they also, Ghetto Boys stood up and supported 2 Live Crew during that time too. You know, 2 Live Crew was fighting against obscenity charges at that time. But then right after that, on June 19th, 1991, Bushwick Bill was shot in his right eye by his girlfriend. And you know, Bushwick told 2 versions of the story. Now, here's the first version of that story, right? Now, Bushwick said around that time he was 25 years old and his girlfriend was 17 years old with a 2-year-old baby. Another fact about that day before I go into the story is that same day, DJ Ready Red left the group over money issues. Bushwick was shot 6 hours later, but anyway, so that whole day, right, Bushwick was partying and drinking Everclear liquor, which is also known as pure white evil, and is 190% proof. That's corn liquor if you're from the South. But he was drinking Everclear liquor. Then he started drinking some E&J. Then he started drinking some Crown Royal. Then he started drinking some gin. Plus, smoking weed laced with PCP. And on top of all that, he was depressed and having suicidal thoughts. He said he started thinking about all the things he didn't have in life at that time. So when he got home, his mind just wasn't there at all. He wanted to pick a fight with his girlfriend so she could shoot him dead to collect insurance money. So him and his girlfriend had got into it. Well, he said he shot the gun at her and her 2-year-old son. Then he started hitting her. He swung a vacuum at her and was provoking her to shoot him, and she wouldn't do it. So that's when he grabbed her 2-year-old child and threatened to throw him out of the window if she didn't shoot him, because Bushwick wanted to die to collect this insurance money that the record label had on him. So he started fighting her again, and then he cocked the gun and handed it to his girlfriend, and they started tussling and fighting again. And that's when she just closed her eyes while pointing the gun to his face, and the gun went off and hit him right in his right eye. Now, in another interview, he told a different story of what happened. He said he was trying to find a way to have something happen to him so his mom could get insurance money. He didn't want to commit suicide because life insurance don't honor that. So he was trying to make an accident happen. So when he got back from the club, this is the second version now of the story he told. So he said when he got back from the club that night, he saw some weed on the counter and he didn't know if it was his weed or what. So that's when he just rolled up a blunt with it. But he didn't know that the weed was laced with PCP. He got so high and an idea came to him to go wake up his mom, provoke her, hand her a gun, and have her shoot him. He figured he'll still be able to get to heaven and his mom will get life insurance and everybody would just be happy. So his mother grabbed the gun and he put his face right in front of it. She pulled the trigger, but she closed her eyes and turned her head first, so it didn't work out the way he wanted to work out. She shot him in the eye. He said when he came to, he thought he was dead. He got up and he looked at himself in the mirror and was like, if you're dead, you ought to be able to see through yourself. Why can't I see through myself? He thought he was dead. Then he said he heard a noise and it was his mother saying, he made me kill him. I don't know what the hell's going on. And that's when he opened the door, telling himself he's not dead because he can't see a reflection through himself. And then his mother took off running. Wow. Bushwick was wild. That's crazy. Now here's the crazy part though. Well, it's actually scary for real. So look, the medics declared him dead. He was pronounced dead. So he was in the morgue for 2 hours and 45 minutes. And all of a sudden, he just woke up and came to. Bushwick said he woke up and saw his toe was tagged and they was pushing him in the drawer, and that's when he looked both ways and he saw frozen people to the left, frozen people to the right. He said he thought he was dreaming at first, right? And then he saw people in front of him pushing the door closed, and that's when he yelled out like, "Yo!" And everybody stopped, and he said he has to pee. That's when he jumped up and pulled the catheter out, and the security guard at the morgue just stood there in shock like, this guy's alive. So then here we go. So then Bushwick starts peeing on the security guard's leg, and the security guard took off running, yelling and screaming, saying he's alive, somebody help. So that's when, the doctors ran back in there and they shot him up with a big needle, and after that he said he woke up handcuffed to a hospital bed. Wow. Unbelievable. Now that's crazy. And look, they say he's one of the few people in the world to have a birth certificate and a death certificate, because he was DOA on arrival. He actually died on June 19, 1991 at approximately 4:35, and he didn't come back to life until he was in the morgue, which was around 7 o'clock. And they was actually getting ready to do an autopsy on him. Man, this is crazy. What's crazy is Bushwick begged Willie D not to harm his girlfriend that shot him, because he knew Willie D didn't play around. Bushwick said it was his fault, told Willie D don't mess with it, it was his fault. Now, the following month, on July 9th, 1991, the Ghetto Boys released their third album titled We Can't Be Stopped. Classic album, which ended up going certified platinum. It's crazy because the album cover is a real picture of Willie D and Scarface pushing Bushwick on his hospital bed down the hall after just getting shot in the eye. They snapped the picture on the day before his surgery to remove his eye. Plus, the bullet was permanently stuck in the back of his head. And Bushwick said he regrets doing that picture for that album cover, because it still hurts him to look at that cover, because that was a personal thing he went through. And he still feels the pain from the fact that he's got a bullet in his brain. He said on that day, the hospital had drugged him up because he was being prepared for surgery. He couldn't eat, he couldn't drink anything. They had him on a bunch of medicine, and he didn't see the album cover until it hit the shelves. But anyway, the We Can't Be Stopped album drops, and the single called Mind Playing Tricks on Me hit number 1 on the US Rap Songs Billboard charts and number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100, making it the highest charting song by the Ghetto Boys. They used a sample from the 1974 song Hung Up on My Baby by Isaac Hayes. But I'm still playing that song to this day, y'all. Rolling Stone ranked the song the 5th greatest hip-hop song of all time. Another fact is, the song was originally, it was Scarface's solo song, but he gave the third verse to Bushwick Bill. And when Bushwick spit that verse, it was a classic. Now, Scarface said why he wrote the song. He said, his grandmother was the one who inspired him to write the song, because one day he had gone into her room and she was just mumbling to herself. Her lips was working or something. And he said, "Mama, what you talking about?" And she said, "Oh, nothing. My mind's playing tricks on me." Something the old people used to say all the time. But in my opinion, I think Bushwick Bill verse is one of the greatest verses of all time, man. That's one of my favorite songs of all time. I know all the lyrics to each verse too. Everybody verses. And they play that song still like crazy on the radio every Halloween. But another song on that album that was crazy was called Chucky. And in an interview, Bushwick said he was the one that created the horrorcore genre after he did the songs Mind of a Lunatic and Chucky. He credits himself and Gangsta Nip for the horrorcore genre. But then right after the success of that album, they was in the media again. Now this time, Ghetto Boys was in the media after two Kansas City teens murdered another teen, and their lawyer was trying to say that the combination of alcohol, marijuana, and violent Ghetto Boy lyrics temporarily hypnotized these teens to commit the murder. Wow, that's crazy. They say they was listening to Bushwick's song called Mind of a Lunatic when they killed that teen. Now, after all that, Bushwick started working on his solo album. And on September 8th, 1992, he released his debut album titled Little Big Man, which hit number 32 on the Billboard 200 and number 15 on the top R&B hip hop albums chart. The single called Ever So Clear was my junk. I remember watching that video all the time, man. And you know, that song, he explained the whole shooting incident that happened that night, how he lost his eye. The following month, they released a compilation album. The Ghetto Boys released a compilation album called Uncut Dope, Ghetto Boys Best, which had the unreleased song called Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangster. Y'all remember that song? Now, on March 9th, 1993, the Ghetto Boys released their fourth album titled Till Death Do Us Part, which hit number 1 on the R&B hip hop charts. That's their first number 1 album. And it hit number 11 on the Billboard 200 and was certified gold. For this album though, Willie D wasn't on there. He had left the group to pursue a solo career, and they replaced him with Big Mike. Big Mike was dope too. But I used to love the song called 6 Feet Deep because it had that sample from the Commodores, the 1977 Easy Like Sunday Morning song. I also love the songs on that album called No Nuts, No Glory and Crooked Officer. Now, that same year, Bushwick appeared on The Martin Show as the character Trey from the episode called Your Arms Too Short to Box, which was the 24th episode of season 1. I remember I had that VCR tape back in the day too. I watched that over and over. And you know, he also appeared on a song called Stranded on Death Row for Dr. Dre's The Chronic album. And he was in the Dr. Dre video called Dre Day. On July 11th, 1995, Bushwick released his second solo album titled Phantom of the Rapper, which hit number 3 on the US top R&B hip hop albums Billboard chart and number 43 on the Billboard 200 albums chart. He had also started his own record label called Dollars and Cents because, you know, around that time, everybody had kind of left Rap-A-Lot Records due to financial issues with the label. But the following year, on April 2nd, 1996, the Ghetto Boys reunited after a 3-year breakup and released the album titled The Resurrection, which hit number 1 on the US top R&B hip hop albums Billboard charts and hit number 6 on the Billboard 200 charts. It was also certified platinum. Now, the single called The World is a Ghetto hit number 12 on the Billboard Hot Rap Singles chart and also was on the original Gangsters movie soundtrack. In November 1998, the Ghetto Boys released their 6th album titled The Good, The Bad, The Ugly. And Bushwick wasn't on that album though. Bushwick wasn't on that album due to contractual disputes with the label. And there's a song on that album called Gangsters Put Me Down that I used to love that had Beyonce on that song. Go back and listen to a song called Gangsta Put Me Down. Beyonce was singing on that song. But anyway, so Bushwick wasn't on that album. He had left the group. And then look, right after that, Bushwick ended up filing a $20 million lawsuit against his label Rap-A-Lot and New Tribe Records, who was distributing Rap-A-Lot Records at that time. He said he was suing them because some of the record label's employees had assaulted him at a comedy club. And you know, months later, on October 27, 1998, he released his 3rd solo album titled No Surrender, No Retreat. And for that album, Bushwick had dedicated that album to one of his friends named Gil Epstein. He was a lawyer that Bushwick had worked with. He had helped Bushwick beat a marijuana charge, and afterwards they became real good friends. But Bushwick, he dedicated that album to him because he was shot and killed during an attempted robbery in Houston, Texas in 1996. Now, also that same year in 1998, Bushwick was arrested at a Holiday Inn in Homewood, Alabama, after police received complaints of marijuana smell coming from his room. And, when the police arrived and got there, they discovered 2 grams of pot plus a 12-gauge shotgun and 4 live shells. In 2000, Bushwick was rushed to the hospital after taking so many types of drugs that doctors told him that they wasn't sure if they could save him. But, they saved him. They flushed the system out and he was okay. In 2001, he released his 4th solo album titled Universal Small Soldier. On January 25th, 2005, Ghetto Boys reunited again and released the 7th and final album called The Foundation, which hit number 19 on the Billboard 200 chart. And man, they had a song on there called The Secret. That was my joint right there. I love that song. Now, months later, on March 29th, 2005, that same year, Bushwick released his 5th solo album titled Ghetto Mix. Plus, this was the last solo album to contain explicit lyrics. Bushwick was done. He said no more cursing, no more cussing and cursing. In 2006, he became a born-again Christian and wanted to change his life and get right with God. But then, in 2007, he was arrested by bounty hunters for a warrant he had for disorderly conduct after he was involved in an incident during the filming of MTV's The Real World. Now, in 2008, he was sentenced to 3 days in jail for assaulting a woman who had secured a protective order against him. On November 17, 2009, he released his 6th and final solo album titled My Testimony of Redemption, which was the Christian rap album and more positive. Like I said earlier, he said he didn't want to do no more cursing. He became a born-again Christian and everything. On this Testimony of Redemption album, he had songs like Going to the River, God Heals the Pain, and No More Child's Play. Bushwick said while he was working on this album, it just felt like the songs were coming together spiritually, like he was reading the Bible and they just jumped out at him. But then all of a sudden, all this weird bad stuff started happening to him while he was making the album. He started going to jail for tickets and disorderly conduct. He got drunk, started running around, acting crazy, just oblivious to everything what was going on. Set himself on fire, tried to set himself on fire. And he said he didn't really understand what was going on. He just had to keep working on that album because it was spiritual. He had to finish that album. Now, in May 2010, Bushwick was arrested in Georgia for possession of marijuana and cocaine. And, based on his prior arrest record and not being an American citizen, he was facing deportation. And he ended up missing. Now, when he got in trouble for that, he ended up missing the VH1 2010 Hip Hop Honors for the South. So he wasn't there. And the rapper, The Game had to do his verse for the song Mind's Playing Tricks on Me. But then months later, he ended up beating that case and he was allowed to stay in the USA. On May 1st, 2019, Bushwick revealed to TMZ and the whole world that he had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Now, how he found out he had cancer, he said around December the year before, he was supposed to be taking his daughters to some dog rescue event, right? And his daughters were worried about him because his eye was turning yellow and they wanted him to go see a doctor. So he agrees and goes see a doctor. And that's when the doctors told him that they see a mass on his pancreas, but they can't understand it because it's not alcohol, it's not sugar, and it's not diabetes. But after more testing, they said it was stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And that pancreatic cancer is undetected until it's in the 4th or 5th state. Bushwick stated that he's not really afraid of dying, because if anyone knows anything about him, from the song called Ever So Clear, he died and came back already back in June 1991. So he knows what it's like on the other side. So, after the news came out about his cancer, the Ghetto Boys reunited and decided to go on tour and, do some concerts to help out Bushwick with all his medical bills. And plus, Willie D and Scarface would make them some money too. And people would just love to see the Ghetto Boys all back together again. And, they named the tour The Beginning of a Long Goodbye, the Final Farewell Tour, which didn't sit right with Bushwick. At the last minute, Bushwick pulled out of the tour for a couple of reasons that he stated. Now, one reason he said he pulled out from that tour was he felt organizers were piggybacking off his stage 4 pancreatic cancer diagnosis. He thought the name of the tour, called The Beginning of a Long Goodbye, the Final Farewell, made it seem like he was on his deathbed. Because at first he came up with the idea called Bushwick and Friends Tour, but after he found out he had cancer, he believes tour organizers exploited his cancer news, jacked his tour idea, and turned it into a full reunion for the Ghetto Boys. And that's why he decided to pull out. And after that, he started planning his own 20-city solo tour, and he named it F Cancer Tour. Well, he spelled the F, F Cancer Tour. He spelled it P-H-U-C-K cancer. And, he wanted to donate 10% of the proceeds to pancreatic cancer patients in each city on the tour. But on June 9th, 2019, Bushwick Bill dies from stage 4 pancreatic cancer in Colorado. That pancreatic cancer, man, would take you out so fast. He had just revealed to the world he had it months before. He was dead just like that. And Bushwick, he did complete a book about his life with author Charles L. Hughes titled Why Bushwick Bill Matters. So definitely support that. It's on Amazon and everything. Y'all can check that book out. And he also has a son that's a hip-hop artist named Young No that's doing this thing in the music industry too. And he's keeping his name alive and his legacy alive. So I would love to see a Bushwick Bill movie. Oh my God, that would be so crazy. A Bushwick Bill movie? I don't know who could play Bushwick. And there's supposed to be a documentary coming on Showtime soon about his life too. They've been filming him since 2012 about this documentary. They started filming that in 2012 or something like that, but it never came out. Also, Ghetto Boys DJ, producer, DJ Ready Red died from a heart attack, I think the year before. He was 53 years old. He died. DJ Ready Red is, you gotta give him his credit. He actually created the Ghetto Boys sound in the beginning. So rest in peace to DJ Ready Red. And there's just so much to the Ghetto Boys story that it's impossible to touch up on everything. Their history is just too deep. I mean, Jay Prince got a book out called The Art and Science of Respect. Scarface put a book out called Diary of a Madman, The Ghetto Boys' Life, Death, and the Roots of Southern Rap. And I'm waiting on Willie D to release his book. That's going to be crazy too. They definitely, the Ghetto Boys need a movie on the big screen. They definitely need a movie. I hope they do put a movie out in the future about the Ghetto Boys. And Willie D caught a lot of backlash because he spoke about his real feelings on Bushwick Bill. I mean, he didn't go to the funeral. He said they never liked each other. They got into a lot of fights. You type in Bushwick Bill, Willie D, you're going to see Willie D talking about all the fights and everything they done went through. But hey, Willie D spoke his truth. They never liked each other. Hey, Bushwick Bill, man. Wow. Like I said, man, y'all Google Bushwick Bill and you will hear some wild stories. MC Search got a crazy one about him. You know, I seen Bushwick Bill and Tretch fighting and wrestling. All it's all types of stuff, man. Bushwick Bill, wow, 52 years old, young though, man. 52 years old. Rest in peace, Bushwick Bill.